Zochreini Hashem and lekaini boy letoyevu. Yifogdaini boy leverovacho. Lehoishi aini boy lechayim, vehoishi aini boy lechayim toivim. Oh my.
Hello everyone, in honor of Rosh Chodesh and our series about 100 brachot a day, I thought I'd combine both of them and ask the following question. If you're in the summer months, as we are here in Israel, and you daven at what's called an early Maariv, namely right after Plag HaMincha, it's still broad daylight outside, but you can daven Maariv, what happens to your count? Is your Maariv blessings, 2 blessings before Shema, 2 after Shema, the 19 blessings of the Amidah, counted for the next day? Or is it counted for that day? Assuming that you go from night to night, which day is it counted for? So in order to answer this question, let's begin today with a background. Rav Aryeh Tzvi Fromer, famed as the Kotchiklover, he was the Rebbe of Klochiklov, but eventually when Rav Meir Shapiro died, Rav Aryeh Tzvi Fromer became the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivat Chachmei Lublin. We're talking about a huge Gadol b'Yisrael, and with a lot of Hasidish undertones that you're about to see. He comes along and says, what do you do on a Rosh Chodesh when you daven early? Do you say Ya'ale v'yavo and Maariv, or don't you? On the one hand, outside, it's not yet Rosh Chodesh. It's still broad daylight. But on the other hand, you're davening Maariv for the next day. And ultimately, there are about 3 points of view on this question. The Magen Avram in the name of the Shlosh says, no, Shabbos, if you daven Friday night, you daven a Friday night Shabbos Tikka Amida. Why? Because there's a din of Tosefet Shabbos. We diminish from Friday and ultimately accept Shabbos a few minutes before Shkia minimum. So therefore, we're turning Friday into Shabbos. That's called Tosefet Shabbos or Tosefet Yontiv or Tosefet Yom Kippur. But a day without Isser Malacha, like Rosh Chodesh, there is no Tosefet. And therefore, he says in the name of the Shla, Shabbat sheyesh mitzvah b'hosafata maskir ritzei. If you eat your Shabbos meal and it's still broad daylight outside on a Friday night, you say ritzei at the end of your benching. Aval b'Rosh Chodesh keshechal b'chol. But on a Rosh Chodesh, if you started your meal on Rosh Chodesh and now it's nighttime, you do not say Ya'ale v'yavo at the time you bench because there's no Tosefet to Rosh Chodesh. Plugging it into our question, you wouldn't say Ya'ale v'yavo at Maariv because maybe Maariv you can daven, but Rosh Chodesh has not yet come. And indeed, the Kotchiklover, Rav Aryeh Tzvi Fromer, brings in the name of the Gerer Rebbe of his time that when he was in Yerushalayim and he davened at an early Maariv, he did not say Ya'ale v'yavo, saying exactly this svara, Ein tzarich Ya'ale v'yavo mishum de'ein l'Rosh Chodesh Tosefet. On the other hand, it seems like most poskim don't poskim this way. The Hagaot Maimoniot, one of the 3 foremost Talmidim of the Maharam Rutenberg that was killed al Kiddush Hashem, comes along and says that on the night of Purim, if you daven at an early Maariv, you say Al Hanisim, even if you didn't read the Megillah yet. You have to wait till night to read the Megillah, but you can say Al Hanisim already because that Maariv corresponds to the next day. And indeed, the Magen Avram says, if someone comes to shul close to Maariv, and it's an early Maariv, and he didn't daven Mincha yet, and he went ahead and they said, be Chazan. He didn't think twice, he went to become Chazan. He did good, he didn't do good, the Mishnah Berurah said he didn't do good, but that's another story. He comes along and he already daven Maariv. Paskins the Magen Avram, now he has to make up Mincha. He davens the Amidah of Maariv twice, and in the second time, he mentions Ya'ale v'yavo just like the first time. In other words, if you daven Maariv on Erev Rosh Chodesh, at Plag HaMincha, you do say Ya'ale v'yavo. The Shulchan Aruch says regarding Purim that you say Al Hanisim Balayla Uvayom at night and in the day, and the Mishnah Berurah points out even if you daven at an early Maariv, you still say Al Hanisim. Explains the Sharat Tziyun, the Mishnah Berurah's perush on himself. Since we're allowed to daven Maariv from Plag HaMincha, none of the poskim ever mentioned that on Rosh Chodesh don't say Ya'ale v'yavo. So therefore, just like you can make Havdalah, say Atachon Antanu, if you daven Maariv early on Motzei Shabbos, which is allowed b'sha'at hadchak, so too, If you daven an early Maariv on Rosh Chodesh, you say Ya'ale Ve'yavo. To explain this, the Eretz Hatzvi, the Kotchik lover, explains in the name of his Rebbe, the Avnei Nezer. Any mitzvah b'dibur, anything that you verbally have a mitzvah to do, you could do the mitzvah now, but it takes place later. For example, you can give a ring to a woman now and say you will become my wife in 30 days from now. So the Maaseh Kedushin, the act of giving the ring, is now. The Chalot, it actually taking effect, will only take effect after 30 days. Then she'll become your wife. She'll become what's called an Eshet Ish. So therefore, explains the Kotchik lover based on that model. Same thing here. You're davening Maariv and saying Ya'ale Ve'yavo now. It will be Chal when it becomes dark. In his words, V'achanami b'yigia tor plaga mincha. Afal gav disban tfilat arbit befol hu balayla mikol makom. חל עליו חיוב מפלג המנחה, ויוכל להתפלל לפני הזמן שיחול בלילה, ואם כן, שפיר יוכל לומר גם יעלה ויבוא, אף שהוא יום. As I mentioned, he bases this on his Rebbe, the Sachatshava Rebbe said in his Avnei Nezer that on Hanukkah, if you lit candles early, namely from Plag HaMincha, which is allowed b'sha'at adchak, then if they stay lit till the proper time, you don't have to relight them at night. Why not? He says, because, and I quote, "Ma'aseh shel achshav sheyatza achar kach keshelo kalta ha'ma'aseh." You're doing the action now. It will take effect after dark, and even though there's a gap between them, what you do now will have effect after dark. So the Ma'aseh mitzvah is now, the Chalot mitzvah is later, just like you say Ya'ale Ve'yavo now, even though Rosh Chodesh begins when it gets dark. Only at that time we'll say the Isser Hesped of Rosh Chodesh, not to eulogize, will take effect. But it seems like most poskim say, nah, you daven Maariv, you made it into Rosh Chodesh. From this perspective, if we made it into nighttime, what about our 100 brachot? Does the 100 brachot counts now stop, assuming that you go from night to night, and now you're starting from 1, or no? Just like regarding Sfira, we say even if you daven an early Maariv, you can still count the Sfira from the day before. We'll say the same thing here, that the 100 count continues through until it gets dark. More about that in the next podcast.
Ay, ay, zochraini Hashem, Elikaini